Hi, everyone, to the Men's ADHD Support Group podcast. I am really excited to do this episode today. This is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. And today we're going to be talking about navigating ADHD as a Hispanic male. And this subject is really special to me because, and I just gave the spiel to everyone before, but many of us growing up with ADHD, we don't really have role models to look up to. We feel, especially in Hispanic communities, we feel very alone and crazy and lazy for having this condition and way of operating. And one of my intentions within the next year is to bring some more awareness to the Latin Hispanic experience with ADHD. And I'm so excited to be talking today to James O'Gara and then Julio. Julio, what's your last name?
Rojas, Julio
Julio
Rojas.
Rojas. Awesome. That's crazy. My mother's last name is Rojas too. But I'm really excited to be here chatting with you both. And we'll start off with you, James. James,
Okay.
tell me a little bit about yourself
All right.
and your background with ADHD.
Well, I mean, for my last name, it doesn't sound Hispanic because my father is Irish. My grandparents came from Ponce, Puerto Rico. So my grandmother and my grandparents had 7 children. My mom's one of 7. None of them married Puerto Rican. So my family is very multicultural. Going down, the siblings married Irish, Venezuelan, my dad Irish, off the boat Italian, off the boat Greek, like literally jumped off the boat in New York Harbor, was an illegal immigrant. To my to my uncles married German Irish. So I grew up with multiculturalism, like all this like backlash against diversity. Well, that's my family. I can't not be that. Thanksgiving at my house, all these wonderful foods from different, the different cultures. I didn't find out I was ADHD until January 2021. My sister, my youngest sister, who's 4 years younger than me, said, Jim, I think you're ADHD like me. She was diagnosed 2 years prior. So March 25th, 2021, 6 days before I turned 45, I got my diagnosis for ADHD-C, combined type. I had been diagnosed gifted at 5. I skipped kindergarten right in first grade. I spent like maybe 4 days in kindergarten. So I was always in advanced classes, but I didn't realize my ADHD, or it was undiagnosed all that time. There's times where I'd drop out, I'd not perform well enough to stay in the advanced classes, go back to regular, ace those because they were just too easy, and then get bumped back in. So that was like all through my career till I graduated high school. That was a pattern in my academics. My ADHD wasn't caught then, or for probably a number of reasons, probably lack of understanding or the myth that smart kids can't have ADHD. But my parents separated when I was a freshman in high school, and my dad's an alcoholic. And so they were all my therapists, all the guidance counselors, the counselor at school was focused on that aspect of my life. And they were very helpful with that. And so I can't fault them for not seeing the ADHD, or I don't blame them for not seeing it. And so that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm a music teacher, adjunct instructor at the college level. And then I have 2 daughters, 11 and 8. And they, after I got my diagnosis, we realized, oh, they're ADHD as well. So they got their diagnosis in July 2022.
Wow. Okay. Well, excited to dive further into that. Thank you for sharing your story. And now, Julio, can you tell me your background as far as when were you diagnosed with ADHD and what that journey was like?
Yeah, so I got diagnosed in 2010. So basically for me, it was parents came from Mexico to California here, and when I was like 3.5 years old, dad was always worked 2 jobs. Mom, wasn't too much in the picture. She was also working. So in school, it was quite different for me. So I was being taught in English, yet Spanish is my first language. And not only was I taught in English and Spanish being my first language, I had a so-called learning, I call it a learning difference. Some people call it a learning disorder, but just learn different. So basically I had to learn the language, and then I had to learn how to learn in that language. As ADHDers, we kind of learn different, right? So I had 2 things not in my favor, so to speak. So then I basically just don't even know how I flew through the school system. I just I just don't really know. You know what I mean? I remember being in high school, they're like, we're gonna send you to a different school because you don't have enough credits. This other school was like the continuation. Anyway, so I got out of there and then, whatever, just worked, whatever. And then like at 28, I just got really fed up of people just looking at me because my English was so bad and having that low self-esteem because you can't communicate. I mean, throughout my life, I dated, also multicultural. So I remember going to my girlfriend's houses and everyone speaking English and I was just quiet because I didn't understand what the heck they were saying. You know what I mean? The stuff they were telling me, I was like, I don't know what that means. It was just very embarrassing. So basically at 28, I got fed up. I'm like, I'm gonna go back to school. And so with the help of a psychologist, I specialized with ADHD. I went from straight F's to straight A's. And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, this is interesting. I'm considered dumb. And then I'm smart because I got straight A's. And then I was able to get into the two top public universities in the United States. At that point, United States, University of California at Berkeley and University of California at Los Angeles. Anyway, so that's kind of what's going on with me. But I guess for me, it was more about my mom was there. That didn't support me much. She didn't understand any of this. Mom was more like showed me love, and I think that's what really helped me. She always accepted me for who I was. You know what I mean? That was more like, well, this is the way you do things, and that's the way you do things. Mom was more like, do things your way, and so I think that support that I had from her, even though she wasn't too much in the picture, when she supported me a lot. That's kind of what got me through. And to me, now in retrospect, that was very important, extremely important. Yeah.
Wow, I hear you talk. I'm like, I completely relate. Yeah, the same exact thing almost. Now, I'm curious to hear from the two of you. What were some of the challenges, and we're going to get into the positives of it too, but some of the challenges that you faced when getting a diagnosis for ADHD, and if you feel that like the Hispanic aspect of it was at all part of it. So like what I'm asking is basically is when I think about when I first sought out an ADHD diagnosis, at that time I pretty much had it instilled in me that I was lazy, that I just wasn't applying myself as much as I should. And a lot of that came from the fact that most of my family, my mother at the time, and my aunts and everything like that, they didn't even know what the term ADHD meant. You know what I mean? Like it was just like a hyperactive boy and everything like that. For me, I was diagnosed with an inattentive type, and for me, it like the stigma that a lot of our culture tends to have around something like this was definitely, it wasn't a full block, but it was definitely a bump in the road that I faced. So I was wondering if any of you two relate to that. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know if it's necessarily a cultural thing as maybe a growing understanding thing over time, like that. In that, like, an ex-girlfriend of mine, this would have been like 2002. I'm in New York City. We go hang out with one of her best friends, and the best friend's boyfriend is like a filmmaker, and he's got ADHD. But I don't think my girlfriend at the time was like saying, I see the traits he has in you. Like, we didn't, it just wasn't on our radar. Like I think my family, we knew, so this is a teenager. So like, I mean, I graduated high school in 93. We did go to therapy at times for like, actually my parents splitting up. My uncle, the one that jumped off the boat, Greek, he passed away summer of 96 for cancer. So we did have therapists, met with therapists to talk about grief. And we knew that my grandfather, the Puerto Rican grandfather,
Yep.
he fought in World War II. And we knew that he had post-traumatic stress disorder from that, PTSD. That's one reason why he was a workaholic. But so we were I think my family was focused on like trauma, and we didn't know that we had these neurotype brains differences. Like recently when my cousins got diagnosed with general anxiety disorder, but I think it's just lack of general knowledge, not necessarily a thing that we have a Puerto Rican family. That I don't think, it's just, I think, greater awareness over time of mental health and mental conditions and neurotypes is what Because looking back though, like a good number of my
Yeah.
cousins, like you could tell we were ADHD as kids, bouncing around, being huge risk takers or doing impulsive stuff. Had I think our parents known, we might have, been diagnosed.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. And by the way, maybe I worded it a little weird, but I'm in complete agreement. It is definitely a lack of um awareness. Kind of like I mentioned early on, like they don't even know, a lot of them don't even know
Mhm.
what ADHD is.
Right.
Our education system definitely has to come into play there a little bit in my view. But yeah, 100%. Julio, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, for me, it was more about, I mean, I've asked my mom a few times, and I think that I mean, they were just too worried about putting food on the table and sending my dad, sending money back to Mexico. And
Yeah.
so there was just work, 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 and more work. So I think definitely a lack of knowledge. I mean, back in those days, growing up, I mean, there wasn't much research like there is now. And like, there's probably like only a few medications around. I mean, I could tell you that I believe that if they would have got me diagnosed, life would have been a lot easier.
Yeah.
But in a way, I think that it got me stronger, though. If you want to get a positive, like going through this tough thing here, it kind of got me a little stronger. But then again, we don't know what would have happened if I had got medicated. Maybe I would have found out earlier that I was a straight A student versus like way later in life, and I felt dumb, and the self-esteem would have been better. Yeah, and in terms of therapy. I laugh at it now, but I remember one time. So my dad I used to like to dress nice, but want to look good. And my dad would take my clothes away, and he would just give me one set of pants and one shirt. So I
Uh,
remember going to, getting sent to therapy, and mom would show up, and then like we went there like 3 times, and on the third time, like the therapist is like, "Oh, you brought your uniform," you know what I mean? Because it was always the same shirt, same pants. And so she, I think she finally, I think three after the fourth time said, "You know what? That's not showing up." And I clearly remember these words, lost cause. This is a lost cause. I had no clue what that meant.
yeah.
To me, it was more like, oh, I guess we're not coming back. She can't help us. She goes, the father needs to show up. And my dad didn't believe in that. He was just like, we can handle our own business here. We don't need anybody to get in our business and blah, blah, blah. So that was definitely a challenge, I think, in retrospect. That could have helped, right? The therapy, and then the knowledge of what is this ADHD thing? Maybe my son has it. I mean, no one caught it. Like I remember being in class, and because I'm combined type, so they would put me on the side. Like there would be a bunch of kids here, and I would be like on the side there, and I would ask like as best as I could in the language, and like why am I here and why are they there? You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
because I guess I was just talking a lot and trying to start conversations with people, and they were just trying to teach the traditional school system way, which obviously for most of us doesn't work. So
Mhm.
yeah, so those are definitely some challenges, and definitely low self-esteem. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, there's so many different ways that we can go with that because, like I said, similar case to me. With my background, I'm from Washington Heights in New York City. I grew up around a lot of Dominicans and whatnot, and in a very low income area. And I mean, Shane kind of sent me a comment as you were talking on what you said, because the reality is that there are a lot of Hispanic kids growing up with a mom who's working 2 jobs to hold it
Mhm.
down and everything like that. Like we're talking like lack of awareness with ADHD. I mean, what time do they even have to be aware of that? You know what I mean? James, I saw you got your hand up. I mean, do
Mm.
you have any thoughts on that? Anything you want to
Well,
contribute?
well, I want to share actually what my sister wrote, my ADHD sister. Her name's Katie, because
Yeah.
I told her I was going to be doing this podcast, and did she have any thoughts about growing up in our family, the Puerto Rican, and did that being Puerto Rican, did that how that affected us with our neurodivergence? And she wrote, well, nothing super in particular, but I will say, because it is a cultural thing in Latino families, is the teasing. Outsiders may
Yeah.
think it's mean, but it's always done out of love, like calling our other sister Kelly Blanca, white. So like me and my sister have my mom's coloring. Katie have my mom's coloring. Kelly has my mom's facial features, but my dad's skin color. So when mom would go grocery shopping, like my mom looks like Maria from Sesame Street. She would, get asked, oh, who's this kid you're babysitting? And, my mom would be like, that's my daughter. Our also our grandmother would call one of my cousins as a baby gordito, little chubby. And so my sister keeps writing. And in regards to neurodivergence with rejection sensitivity dysphoria, sometimes it hurt and it made me feel unloved, even though I knew I was. Also, something that happens in Latino families is just the non-accepting acceptance. And she wrote, watch the Saturday Night Live skits with Pedro Pascal as a Latino mom. Oh,
Yeah.
my baby does not have depression. He just gets sad sometimes.
Yeah.
Or she writes literal quotes from our family. That's just the way he or she is, shrugging his shoulders. I think a lot of Latino kids don't mask around their families because their behavior is just accepted, even though not understood. And I was known as the nerd in the family, the geek. I was into like comic books. I was a little weird, but okay, but we love you. We don't understand your weirdness. And like my best friend in high school, he once said to me, and I quote, Jim, you're the weirdest person I know, but that's why I love you and I like having you around. and so Julio, like when you said your mom, being accepting of who you are and just giving you that love, that that was there even in our family, even if there wasn't understanding.
Oh man. I think Shane, I think we might make this like a 4-part series episode. So many different directions that can go with that.
Yeah. So I want to, for the podcast listeners out there, I want to sit here and say something. Jim has the brightest green goatee I have ever seen on a person. It is absolutely amazing, and I just need y'all to understand this. But no, I just, that's all I wanted to say as far as that was concerned, was for the podcast listeners.
Oh man, that is the best interruption you have ever done. That was it has nothing to do with what he was saying.
I've been looking at it for 15 minutes now, and I'm just like, I have to say something or I'm just going to explode.
And what's funny is like when I was younger, I had hair down to my shoulders, curly, like beautiful hair, curls that women pay money for. But I'm a musician. I've played on stages all over the country. But now I'm a dad, and how can I be cool for my kids? And my girls were like, "Can you dye your beard?" And I've done it pink, blue, multiple colors. And obviously, this is for St. Patrick's Day. And my daughters do Irish dancing, so I played guitar while they did a performance at their school. So that's what this was for.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. Shane,
can we tangent real quick? And this is for all three of you, and this is just me being super curious because Jim, with your background being Irish, Puerto Rican, and Julio with you growing up, did y'all celebrate all of the holidays? Like growing up, was that a major thing? Because whenever I think about the Hispanic culture, is like that. My uncle who married my aunt, he was Hispanic, and every year, like, everyone came together like 4 or 5 times a year from like hundreds of miles apart to come together and have these gigantic like backyard barbecue. Front yard was like had all the kids playing, and then all of the women were in the kitchen, and it was just this huge mess of people who were just having fun. Was that something that y'all really experienced a lot of?
I'm actually really glad that you brought that up, Shane, because there's a powerful point that we can get into on just holiday events like altogether. And I'm curious to see if any of you two relate. But in my experience, to answer your question directly, Shane, I mean there have been definitely holidays like Easter, for example. Like I have yet to meet like anyone in my family who acknowledges that day. And we'll do like Christmas on Christmas Eve. I don't know if y'all relate to that, but like Christmas is just another day for us here. But when we would get together, like people would like travel and everything like that, and we would see everybody. And that time was always a time that I dreaded. And I promise, like with this podcast, I do want to get into the positive aspect of things. And I really don't want to have that victim mentality feel, but I'm going to temporarily step into that space. But when those holiday seasons would occur, that's when the comparing would happen to like the cousin who is well organized and the straight A student and everything like that, and maybe doing well in his job and everything like that. And, And I would look at myself and think that I'm doing something terrible. But the one that this would really impact is actually my mother. Not even because she didn't love me or anything like that, but because she felt the whole time that, and mind you, she didn't know about like what ADHD was like, but it would like impact her self-confidence. It's like, why is my son struggling with school? And, like, what am I doing that's wrong? And yeah, I mean, just thinking about that time, I just thought a lot about um comparing myself to others, like the shame I would get for not being interested in some of the same things. Like James, you talked about how you were into comic books. I mean, can you tell that Batman is my thing?
Yeah.
I was always that like nerdy and like weird kid and everything like that. And those times were definitely a little bit challenging. But what do y'all have to say on that? I guess we'll start off with you, Julio,
Or
right on.
I don't remember much. I think that due to the being first generation here, like parents that they were still trying to assimilate, they were still trying to figure things out, and then again, like I don't think they had much time to figure things out really because there was just work, 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 and more work. So I do remember the Christmas Eve definitely. Like we would wait until 12 p.m. And then here having the Mexican background, the tamales, we would just wait until whatever midnight and then start opening our presents.
So my family, it was big. In my generation, I'm one of 18. My mom is one of 7. So our family get-togethers are like 25 for Christmas is small. Julio mentioned tamales. Puerto Ricans have pasteles, meat and mashed plantains. And, I remember making those every Christmas. It's like a 2-day affair of, everyone taking turns mashing yuca and plantains and making this mixture and then tying them up and cooking. We would cherish like our family allotment and, put them in the freezer and save them. So I think having that big family, just like I have friends built in. My cousins were my first friends, and my family is a little different, Julio, in that my mom and her generation, they weren't raised bilingual. My grandparents kept like Spanish as a language between them. They wanted their kids to assimilate. A number of my aunts have went back and learned Spanish in their adult years. So like 2 or 3 of my aunts are fluent. So on one level, my family is, was very Americanized, but like you look at my aunts and uncles, they're not the olive skinned. And so you could tell that you get well, where are you guys really from? So we tried to get together a lot. Some of my aunts and uncles moved away, but like a good number of us lived in Long Island, like Weehawken. So we would try to get together often as a family and multiple times during the year.
And do you relate as far as the comparing yourself thing, or
I don't think we had that like competition in our family or like that. It was always like we always shared what we were doing, be it academically or activities. And I think I was fortunate in having a family that was just really, well, everyone has their gifts and, you should pursue them. Like I have cousins who are artistic and can draw. Like one of my cousins ended up working for Martha Stewart for a while and decorating and like, I don't have that skill, but I'm the musician of the family and I got my degrees in music. So we were always pushed and our individuality celebrated.
it's awesome. Cool. Love that. Now, we talked early on about like a lot of the struggles that we face being due to the lack of awareness and information out there on navigating ADHD. I mean, where do we even start with that? What does taking step forwards look like there? Like, is it a political thing of many of our parents having to work 2 jobs and struggling to make it week by week? I mean, what is it here?
Well, I mean, I don't know how it is in like public schools now. One, we send our daughters to a private school because my wife is Jewish, so they go to a Jewish day school. So actually, side note, when I said to my grandmother, "Oh, I'm marrying someone Jewish," she was like, "No problem, mijo. Just tell me when the wedding is. I'll be there." Is public awareness of ADHD, in kids, are they getting identified earlier? Are we still having this misconception that it's just bouncing boys and that it shows up differently in girls? I'd like to think as a whole, maybe there is, and I don't, since my kids go to a school where they're not really, it's not, their school is not diverse. They encounter cultural diversity in their summer camps. I've seen the statistic. Yes, people of color are not getting diagnosed as much, but I have to think it's hopefully better in schools than it was back in the 80s when I was, in elementary, middle school.
It is, yeah. It's growing in that way. We still got some work to do, but
Mhm.
it's definitely growing. Julio?
I think that, I'm also an ADHD coach, and going through training, people get diagnosed and oh my God, that's what I did. So basically I got diagnosed at 35. Like at 28, I started going back to college. But at 35, I actually got diagnosed, which is about 14 years ago. Anyway, so when I got diagnosed, it's funny because I saw them in my training. That's what they did. They're like, oh my God, I'm diagnosed. It explains everything. So they started to do a bunch of research. So that was me in 2010. Like I'm in research book. I mean, if we would have been in my other room, you would probably see 300 books, and they're all, psychology, ADHD, personal
Right.
development. So I think there's a lot out there. There's TikTok, there's YouTube, and then the doctors, Dotson and Barkley and all these other folks that are doing the actual research. So I think for me, seems like there's a lot out there. I just don't know that. I don't know what folks want to do with that. And again, this is just my perspective on when I go on YouTube, and because a bunch of ADHD stuff pops up because the algorithm or whatever. So I think it's a matter of what happens when I'm 16 and neurodiverse or this or that, and then now I kind of like that might be me. Like what does one do in that? Depending on the awareness of the family, right? Because at 16, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to go get diagnosed. Because that's what I did at 35. I said, I'm going to go get diagnosed. But at 16, what do you do? What do you do at 12? And so, and do they even want to get diagnosed, right? Or do they even, and then, we want to follow the crowd when we're like, I remember wanting to be with here they call them the homies, we want to be with the homies. The homies are doing their thing. Yeah, I don't want to do, like, why would I want to go why would I want to be a bookworm? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because in the barrio, in the hood, we're doing other things. We're not doing reading and writing. And I mean, I was the neutral guy because like I never wanted like to be doing bad things. I wanted to do good things. And when they did the bad things, I would always like make an excuse. I gotta go do this real quick. I'll meet you guys later. And so that kind of saved me. And mom was always in the background. Like you would hear that voice. Don't get in trouble. Don't go hang out with those guys. And so again, like, wow, this podcast is like really bringing, like, I never thought about it as much as having that support. You know what I mean? How important support is. And so that voice was always there. And I think that saved me a lot. So again, like, I don't know that. I mean, I know people in the UK that in other areas, coaches there, and it's barely getting there, right? And a lot of people are becoming more aware. But here in the US, I think that it's believing that there is help out there and wanting to get that help, I think is very important versus like, that's just a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
Being a little more open, I think that would be key for me.
No doubt. Yeah, that's a good point. And times are way different now too. I mean, we as an organization, the Men's ADHD Support Group, we reach 17,000 people through social media for free without charging a dime. You know what I mean? And that's a good way to use social media, and information has become much more accessible. And the process of that started when I was a teen, but it's definitely gotten so far. So that's a really good point. I mean, my 2 cents on it is, and I'll give a shout out to my friend Cam. He's the host of a podcast called Translating ADHD. They're a top 5 podcast for people with ADHD. But he did this awesome series where, like a month or two, he was highlighting people of color. Like he was bringing in, like he brought in my friend John Hazelwood, who does work for Black men with ADHD. He had me speak on it and things like that. What I think is beneficial is when it comes to these leaders with ADHD books. You mentioned, Julio, you have like a library. You know what I mean? When it comes to big ADHD platforms on YouTube and things like that, my words of encouragement would always be to understand that a person of color has a voice, and giving people like us platforms to share this message and reach somebody who was probably just like us and probably a little bit stuck in their head when it comes to lacking in self-confidence and whatnot, it can really make a difference for the better. And there's no such thing as too much of it. You know what I mean? Like, Julio, I'm an ADHD coach too. I hear that you're a coach, and I think great. Like, there's more of us. There's millions and millions of people diagnosed with ADHD, and it's the more of us, the better type of thing. And on the flip side too, if you're somebody who has a voice, I mean, share that thing. You know what I mean? Even if you are doing an Instagram live with only 10 people watching, if you're impacting those 10 people for the better, then it's a positive step forward. You know,
listening to you two, it brought up like two thoughts in my mind were that I think with my family, we just didn't know about ADHD. My aunts and uncles all cared, all wanted the best for us. And I think of my oldest cousin who sadly took his life back in April of 2005.
I'm sorry.
And he had been struggling with mental health issues his entire life. But looking at it, we think, well, he may have been undiagnosed ADHD. So that all the treatment for depression wasn't getting at the root cause of the issues in his life. And it's not because his mother or any of us in the family didn't love him enough. You know, his mother didn't deny him going to therapy. We did not know probably what the root of his mental pain was.
Mhm.
So that was one thought. And the other thought was being multicultural. I was a bridge in my community. Like, I was thinking about growing up, you know, I'd hang out with the Latino kids,
Yeah.
my friends, Omar, Denny, Jose, Rodolfo. And then I'd go and easily hang out with the white kids in my town with names like Paul, Josh, and all the typical white names. And I was fortunate that I was accepted in both groups, and neither group said, you don't belong here. And my friends who are Puerto Rican never said to me, oh, you're not Puerto Rican enough. So I was blessed in that, you know, the acceptance. And I think I told my niece, who's Puerto Rican, Irish, and Black, she's felt that in her growing up, that she was not enough for any of those groups. And I say, well, that's where you turn around and say, no, I choose you.
Yeah.
And you get to be the bridge between these groups. And I think more of us who are multicultural come along, that's what's going to happen. And we'll change the culture of our respective groups for the better.
It's amazing. Love that. All right. If you were able to go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice when you were struggling at your worst with ADHD, what would that be? For me, I would tell myself that you underperforming in school, the disorganized room, the struggles with self-confidence, that doesn't come from a place of you being broken. It comes from a place of you simply not understanding how your system works and having been taught how everyone else's system works. You just need to understand what your strengths are and how to navigate the different challenges you face, and you will see how far you can excel. Yeah.
I think I would go for, I think a lot of my problems in my life came from impulsivity. And I look back and there's like plenty of times I should have died. Like, you know, taping pennies to railroad things. Or I jumped into the mud underneath a bridge in a river near our home, trying to show my friends, oh, that's solid ground. Well, I sunk up to mud to my chest. I could have like really injured myself. Going back, this wasn't a thing back then, but, you know, teaching mindfulness, teaching that pause, think about the effects of what your choices will be.
Yep.
I know they're teaching that to young kids now in school. So it's mindfulness is a thing in general culture now. I wish I had that going back all the way to 1980, you know, like when I was 5. That would have been nice to have that then.
Julio?
Yeah, everything you guys said. I would say it's your own unique way of learning. Just keep doing it your way. Do your thing, you know, ask questions. And I think that, I mean, as an ADHD for me, I always had, like, for whatever reason, this instinct that this is right, that's wrong. So if I were to ask a question, I was like, that's not quite it. And I would ask, I asked a lot of questions, period, anyway, until I could figure it out. I was a go-getter. I always pushed. I was like, I didn't settle. I mean, I think that the only thing that kind of got me was the language, right? It's kind of like you're being spoken to in this language that you don't quite understand. So you just got to have to figure it out through seeing things, or like, okay, did it like this? I remember watching TV. I just watched it for the way people moved and they did things. So again, it's just, this is how you are, your unique way, and just keep doing it your way. You'll figure it out.
Love that. Love that. Now, what about to a listener who is fully relating to everything that we're all saying here and just got diagnosed with ADHD, or maybe not even diagnosed yet, but feels they have it? Where do they start?
Well, start with this. Whether or not you have ADHD does not change the fact that you are lovable, you are capable of loving, and capable of being loved. So, I know so many of us struggle in relationships, but our worth, our basic worth of as a being does not change with how your brain is wired. And then I think, that framing the challenges our ADHD brain has, a lot of those challenges can be positives, and so the whole idea of learning how to work with your brain rather than against it, that applies for anyone. But when I was talking with one of my mentors recently, she was the registrar at the college I went to, and she was like, Jim, when you were there, we didn't, even if I thought you had ADHD, what it came across as was an incredible amount of enthusiasm. When you were excited about something, like it was something you're interested in, your enthusiasm was off the charts, and that was infectious for other people. So learning how to frame these challenges as positives, or can have positive sides to it, is, I think, the most important thing. Part of the reason my wife loves me is my ADHD. Even though we didn't know what it was, I'm the one who's always seeking fun in our relationship, coming up with ideas for dates, that it's not all stuff that I want to do. It's fun. It's finding out stuff that she wants to do. It's fun, and planning that date. Well, that's direct out of my novelty seeking for ADHD. So those two things.
It's awesome. Shane sent me a message as you were saying that, saying, I swear to God, Mark, I've heard you say that exact same thing. It's because I believe the exact same thing. It's no doubt. I mean, it's like when we think about our lives as someone with ADHD and the comments that we've been met with and the self-dialogue that we often always have, it's we're lazy, we're just not applying ourselves, we're not enough, all these type of things. So when you're talking about like actually learning to navigate the thing, it's like half the battle is learning to build self-confidence and seeing your worth. Mm-hmm. Beyond learning how to do laundry, it's a self-talk game that a lot of us are playing here. And that's just the truth. We're lovable. Mm-hmm. and the people that we compare ourselves to, like, they have their own set of flaws too. We might just not be seeing it so much on a highlight reel like social media, but that's just 100% well said, James. Thank you.
Well, and I think seeing representation of us in popular media, I mentioned Maria from Sesame Street.
Yeah,
that she looks like she could have been one of my aunts. Yeah. My top 3 guitarists, but like one of the biggest inspirations for me is Carlos Santana. He's Mexican, but growing up on Long Island, all my white friends, all these rockers, yeah, we loved Led Zeppelin and Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, but like I was able to latch onto Carlos Santana. There's someone Latino like me making music and rock music and leaning into being Hispanic. So like now with social media and stuff, we can, and people being able to talk about, we're seeing people, I have ADHD. Justin Timberlake, I'm thinking of just a musician off the top of my head who has ADHD.
Yeah.
30% of musicians and people in the arts are neurodivergent. Like there was a recent study about that. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And then those who are open about how their brain works, I'm thinking of like Selena Gomez talking about her mental health issues. That's just inspiring to anyone, there's some girl out there who heard her talk about that, who feels heard and seen, and there's someone like me on up there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well said. Julio?
Yeah, I'll give you my take because I think it wasn't until I actually got serious that things changed for me. That I actually picked up the phone and said, I called the psychologist from a payphone. Remember that's back in the days in the payphone.
Yeah.
And I was serious about this. I'm serious about making a change. And it all started for me. It all started there because again, I was the leader of my group. I was a clown. For me, that didn't get me anywhere. You know what I mean? It just got me more of like dopamine. And so if I'm making people laugh, if I'm people pleasing, everybody's liking me, why change? Everything is cool. I just keep my little warehouse job and do this and do that and not really grow, right? So it was until like, I'm going to learn this language well so people could respect me. And so I would say that there's help, there's support. The ball is in your court. You have a choice. You always have a choice. And so what would you like to do?
It's awesome. Man, Shane, we got a bunch of good clips from this podcast episode right here.
Yo, that last one that Julio just did,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna like
Yeah.
Also, I'm gonna go. So, Jim, whenever you sat here and you said that first phrase, "Everyone deserves love," I love hearing that. I loved hearing that. Because it just echoes a lot of the greatest minds out there whenever they talk about those things. By greatest minds, I mean Marc. So-
Yeah, no doubt. But all well said. I mean, as we're wrapping up, are you two both active on social media for people to go ahead and find you if they want to learn more or connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Kaizen Guitar, Facebook. I do have a Twitter. I've been taking a break from Twitter. I think I'm there under Jim O'Gara. I'm in the men's ADHD group on Facebook. I've been past couple of weeks trying to limit my social media time to get more productive stuff. Like I'm playing guitar at my sister's wedding. I got like songs I need to learn. I do have a gig coming up. So like, yeah, my cousin, is like, oh, you should try this video game. And I'm like, wait, I have ADHD because you have ADHD as well. I'll get too involved with it and I'll play my guitar.
It's awesome. Yeah. I know what that's like. It's like the ADHD interest level is like either completely on or like not interested at all. So like, my girlfriend thought it was a good idea. And I usually don't play video games for that very reason because they would consume so much of my life. But she thought it was a good idea for me to learn a little bit about Fortnite, which I never thought I would ever care for or be interested in. But I tried it and like now I'm like, I have to like go a week without it because it's too much. But anyways, yeah, cool. Thank you for sharing your social media. Julio, where can people find you if they want to connect?
Not yet. I'm in the process of there's a lot going on right now with what I'm doing.
Okay.
So got that ADHD thing, like 20 things to do and got to sort them out. So, I mean, if anybody wanted to reach me, I'm also on the men's support group, Julio Rojas. So if somebody send me a message or whatever. Yeah. But I love talking. Definitely in the future, I will be out there 14 years of studying ADHD and personal development. I got to do something.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And your voice is needed, definitely, the two of you. So it's amazing that you two were willing to do this. And thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been a really fun podcast to record. And I look forward to talking with everybody soon.